up to the January 6th anniversary, that sad day when a violent mob attacked the Congress, she has put together a bipartisan select committee that's working very hard to uncover every fact about that day and the days leading up to that day. And although we are not done, it's very clear that in addition to the violence, there was intention to the violence. The intention was to replace the individual, Joe Biden, who'd been elected by the American people and the Electoral College, with the loser of the election, former President Donald Trump, to essentially overturn our constitutional form of government. And I'm grateful to the officers who protected us, protected the Senate and the House, the Vice President from violence, but even more important is they protected our democracy from failing that day. Now, we will get to the bottom of everything that happened, but we already know there's things that we have to do to protect our democracy, and Nancy certainly touched upon them. You're well aware that we passed H.R. 1, the For the People Act, not once but twice in the House, a great bill that was marked up through the House Administration Committee with our jurisdiction on elections, as well as the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, where our election subcommittee headed by G.K. Butterfield had hearings all over the United States, and the Judiciary Committee, where I also serve, reported out that bill, and we sent that to the Senate. And since then, of course, because of their arcane rules, we have not seen progress. We have worked very closely, however, with the Senate, and we have a bill. It's being called the compromise bill that Senator Joe Manchin has endorsed, the Freedom to Vote Act. And I wanted to just go through some of the elements, because when you hear compromise, you might wonder, well, is this really going to provide the protection that our democracy needs? And although it's not everything I wanted to do, that was an H.R. 1, it is a very strong bill, and it will do the job in protecting the democracy that we all hold so dear. It provides for protection of voting rights, registration, as well as funding for compliance, early voting, voting by mail, and promoting voter access through voter modernization. It also, although there is a voter ID provision, which we have had grave qualms about, the provisions are such that you can use a student ID, a utility bill, the list goes on, and if you can't come up with any of those dozens of identifiers, you can find someone who's known you for 6 months or more to attest that you are who you are and vote anyhow. So we believe in some ways this will, by putting a bottom line that is actually doable for voters, it will protect against more extreme provisions that have been put up by Republican partisans across the United States. We have also protected voter registration lists. We've done something else that we didn't do in H.R. 1, and I'll tell you why. It never occurred to us that the Republicans would go so far as to monkey with the actual administration of elections themselves, that they would go in and replace nonpartisan election officials with partisan hacks to affect the outcome of the election. But we see in many states that is what is underfoot right now, what the speaker referred to as election subversion. So we, in working with the Senate, we have put together provisions that would prevent that restricts the removal of election administrators, that prevents voter intimidation and intimidation of election workers, that protects election records and gives judicial protection to the right to vote and nonpartisan vote tabulation. So we think we've got a very tight provision to prevent the subversion that we fear and looks to be ongoing.